All right, welcome back. Joyce Kaufman with you. And it seems as if there are probably as many candidates running for the Republican nomination for the congressional district that is currently held by Lois Frankel, that is CD 21. If only we had some of these candidates spread around to some of the other districts that go with nobody challenging the incumbent Democrats, I'd be a happier camper. But another candidate for the Republican nomination, Victor Garcia da Rosa, he is trying to get your support to challenge Lois Frankel in the general election. How are you, sir?
Good morning, Joyce. I'm doing exceptionally well. Thank you very much for having me on your show.
Oh, absolutely. And I've said this over and over again. The audience should know. Anyone who is planning to run for office in this South Florida area needs to come on this show and needs to address the voters directly, because you can't get information otherwise. You're not going to know where they're speaking until they have a public profile. Victor, tell me a little bit about yourself and why you have decided to run, and in particular, why you have chosen this district.
Well, I guess we'll start off with why I chose this district. Back in 2018, there was a very qualified candidate on the Republican ticket that probably would have stood a pretty good chance of actually beating Lois Frankel. The Republican Party of Palm Beach, though, decided not to back him. If we go back just 2 years prior to that, you had Paul Spain, who garnered 35% of the vote against Lois Frankel, and instead of building upon that momentum, the powers that be in Palm Beach County decided to really not put forth anybody, and Lois Frankel, without a single vote, actually became a member of the House of Representatives again for another 2 years.
Unopposed.
And I found that rather unopposed, yeah. So I found that to be rather reprehensible. So that kind of gave me the motivation to actually jump into the race. Originally, I was going to file my papers with the Secretary of State of Florida to coincide with the State of the Union address in January. And because of Nancy Pelosi pushing it off, I waited actually until the 5th of February, the day that our President Donald J. Trump gave his last State of the Union address. That very morning, I filed my papers with the state of Florida and became an official candidate for the Republican Party for Congressional District 21. I was actually the very first to actually submit my paperwork.
Mm-hmm. So your primary reason is because this was an unchallenged seat in the last election, and prior to that, the RPOF, and actually you can take it all the way to the RNCC, failed to support candidates who wanted to run in that district.
Absolutely, and it's more than just that. I mean, that was really what motivated me to actually jump in. But the reality is, we're at a dangerous crossroads right now, Joyce. We're basically at the precipice of losing everything that our founding fathers of this great nation actually had envisioned for us. I don't know if you've heard my campaign slogan is "Bring the government back to we the people." Some 232 years ago, our founding fathers, they sat down and they wrote an inspired document that starts off, "We the people of the United States," in order to form a more perfect union. And then they go on to enumerate 5 precepts or pillars upon which all legislation in our country should be based upon. Number 1 is establishing justice, ensuring domestic tranquility, providing for the common defense, promoting the general welfare, and securing the blessings of liberty. And as we take a look at those 5 things, we see that they are being attacked. And then we take a look at just the first 2 amendments, the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, on a daily basis. They are being attacked and chipped away slowly. And I want to be able to make a difference. What I want to do is I want to bring my district and my constituents and the United States as a whole back to what our founding fathers envisioned for our country. Because as they were finishing the preamble, it says that they established this Constitution for themselves and for their posterity. Their posterity is you and I, Joyce, and everybody else that's living in the United States right now.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you that, I was very active in campaigns in this veritable district in the past, and the district has changed. The lines have been redrawn, and it was a challenging district for a Republican even back then. but it is a more challenging district right now, especially for a Republican who's not going to receive the full support of the RPOF or the RNCC. And, that is my big fear. I think you have tapped into what the biggest problem is in South Florida in particular when it comes to Republican candidates. I remember being told by, at the time, Speaker of the House John Boehner, that if the candidate couldn't raise $2 million in the first 6 months after they had become a legitimate candidate, that the party would not support him. Now, if you do that, you pretty much hamstring most candidates. If you want this government to look like the people, most people cannot raise $2 million in a short period of time. I mean, we were fortunate in that we were able to do that back then, but I think it's harder now.
Yeah, it's very difficult now, but really where my focus is, I mean, up to this point, really, I'm self-financing my campaign. At some point, we'll start doing fundraising, but I'm a firm believer that when you go after big money, PAC money and things like that, money doesn't come free and it doesn't grow on trees, and you'll be beholden, or I would be beholden to those PACs. And again, what I want to do is I want to bring the government back to we the people, where I represent my constituents and the citizens of the United States. I'm not going into the United States House of Representatives to represent big business or PACs. I'm there to represent people like you, people like myself, the regular hardworking person that lives within our country, that's looking for their liberties to be reestablished, not to be chipped away, to be able to, pursue happiness, to be able to have a good job, to be able to have a good income, and more importantly, to be able to just live the dreams that our founding fathers had laid for us some 200 and some odd years ago.
And that is very noble, and it's a great aspiration. But as a person who has literally been involved in campaigns for 30 years, there's a difference between taking money from a special interest and being beholden to them, and being supported by organizations, PACs, and special interests who know that you agree with them in principle, and therefore will be an able representative for not just them, but for the people. I mean, an obvious example of that is the NRA. For people who believe in the Second Amendment, we want our candidates to be supported by the NRA, to be endorsed by the NRA, and therefore to be eligible to receive money from the NRA. I don't think that makes you beholden to them.
Well, yeah, but right now it's kind of difficult. See, when I actually jumped into the race, Joyce, I was the only candidate. There was no other candidate. There was almost 2.5 months before somebody else had actually announced. When I went into this, I went into it with a focus firmly on Lois Frankel. Now there are 5 other active candidates within this congressional district. One of them who has high name value, Laura Loomer, somebody that I greatly respect for her undercover work and her investigative reporting work that she's done over the years. Last month, actually the month before last, in the end of June, my campaign, we co-sponsored the Trump train. What we did is we basically rented out 2 full cars on Brightline, and we took a group of patriots down to the very first Democrat national debate, and it was wonderful. And while I was down there, I actually ran into Laura, and somebody told me, hey, look, Laura's thinking about jumping into the race. You need to try to convince her not to. Like a lot of people have been trying to convince her not to. And I went up to her and I said, Laura, you know what? Welcome. I would love to have you on board. I look at it this way. She's going to be able to bring some type of recognition to this district, number one, not only just on the Democratic side, but on the Republican side. And where I am now, although my focus is firmly on Lois Frankel, a contested primary for me is merely a speed bump that I'm going to step over onto my way to the general election. And once we're beyond a contested primary, then I can go to groups like the NRA, which I gladly accept support and endorsements from them because I believe firmly in the Second Amendment.
Right. Well, they won't give you money. Yeah, but they won't give you money before the general election anyway. But I think it is important to not close that door because, you're going to go, if you were to get the nomination, you'll be going up against a very well-financed campaign on the part of Lois Frankel. I've been there. I know how well-financed that campaign would be. It's comparable to, to challenging Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And I guess my biggest concern because I have now spoken to a number of, I am probably closer to Laura Loomer than anybody in this South Florida area. And I am not happy that she is running. Some people have different, places in the political picture. People urged me to run for Congress, and I said no. The purpose that I serve as a grassroots personality is much more important, and I'd be less effective as one of 435 than I would be as a radio talk show host who gets to talk about these things every single day. I feel the same way about Laura. As much as I love her, her role is not that of a congresswoman. I can just see she's like me. My biggest fear was I'd get into an elevator with Nancy Pelosi and end up, punching her out. There's some people who are just not temperamentally suited to Congress.
You're right on that. I completely agree with you on that, Joyce. But the reason why I'm happy that she's there is going to bring an element of focus on this particular race, having her there. To be perfectly frank, I agree with you 100%. I believe that she is much better suited for other things.
And effective.
In the long run.
Yeah, she's so effective.
Yeah, but you mentioned grassroots. See, I look at it this way, okay? Not to bring religion into it, but I'm about service, okay? I asked to be relieved from service in my church after 19 years of leadership so I can actually run into this race. And in my church, there's actually a scripture that says when you're in the service of your fellow being, you're only in the service of your God, okay? And I'm truly doing this for service. And ultimately, when we talk about grassroots, I'm a firm believer that people can overpower money ultimately. And really what my focus is getting out there, meeting the people, and one by one, getting boots on the ground that are backing the agenda that we have. And our agenda is to bring the government back to we the people. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, I've had so many people, literally thousands of people tell me, Victor, you stand no chance against Lois Frankel. And my response is, well, if I didn't run, that's for sure, I would stand no chance. But the very fact that I am running does give me an opportunity. And, I'm an A-type personality. I'm very driven. I'm goal-oriented. And pretty much every single goal that I ever set out to meet, I've either met or exceeded. And in this particular case, Joyce, after the 3rd of November, probably on the 4th of November, you and I will be having another conversation, and you'll be welcoming me to the 21st District as its next House of Representatives.
That's a very positive outlook, and I certainly hope so. You're going to have to establish your policy goals for the people. I mean, obviously, you're a Republican, so I presume that you are for a balanced budget, although this Congress has done absolutely nothing to further a balanced budget, even when Republicans were in the majority. I suppose you support the tax cuts and the Jobs Act. That's a pretty easy guess. Am I right on those two?
Oh, absolutely. When we look at a balanced budget, I mean, right now, I'm self-employed. I consult. I'm actually consulting now in the hospitality industry. And my expertise is in taking companies that are having problems financially and increasing their revenues and cutting their costs. The reality you and I, Joyce, we're not rich and we live within a budget. If you have $100 coming in, you don't have $200 going out. The reality is you have $100 coming in, you set aside a portion, maybe $10, and then you live off of the other $90. So I'm for a balanced budget. As it relates to Trump's Republican tax cuts of 2017, I fully support that. But at some point, right around 2025, most of those benefits are going to go away. And one of the first pieces that I would like to put forth for legislation is to make that more permanent. Because let's face it, Joyce, as the liberal media, mainstream media, if they're attacking our president with every single punch they've been doing over the last 2.5 years, there's one thing that they cannot deny, and they cannot deny the fact of the economy. They cannot deny record low unemployment overall, but also for minorities. And all of that has to do with the Republicans' Tax and Jobs Act of 2017. So balanced budget, vitally important. Pro-Constitution, extremely important. But more importantly, probably one of the most important things, dear to my heart, are our veterans. Our veterans are ones that chose to serve our country. And I'm a person that's about service. Although I'd never served in the military, I wasn't allowed to medically. But I support our veterans. And I believe that they deserve much better once they get off active duty and they go into retirement, they just go back into the regular workplace. They need to have the VA to where they can actually go and actually receive the services that they really need.
Yeah.
They need job training. They need something to actually elevate them as opposed to putting them down.
So where can people find out about all of your positions? I mean, your website, I think it's Victor Garcia da Rosa for Congress, right? It's a big, long one.
Yeah, it's a big, long one. I've got the name out there. Yeah, I got a lot of grief for that.
Yeah.
But the reality is people are finding it.
Of course.
Yeah, Victor Garcia da Rosa for Congress.com. There you'll find Florida First, pro-Constitution, economic growth, veteran support, pro-term limits, balanced budget, and Social Security protection.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming on, and keep us in the loop, and you're welcome back anytime.
I appreciate that, Joyce. Thank you, and God bless.
God bless you. All right.